session for the regularly quorum.
Okay. It appears on our WebEx that we have a quorum present, but I will call roll just to establish that verbally. So when I call your name, if you would respond that you're present. Mr. Newton.
Present.
Ms. Carpenick.
Present.
Mr. Pepper.
Present.
Mr. Lawless.
Present.
We have 5 board members present and thus a quorum, so we're ready to go.
We are convened electronically today pursuant to Governor Lee's executive orders number 16 and 34 in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak, and also still conduct the essential business of the metropolitan government. Before we move on with the meeting, the governor's executive order requires a motion to proceed electronically. Staff would solicit a motion related to that effect.
Make the motion
Okay,
to approve.
I'm sorry, who is that?
Is Lawless.
All right. There's a motion to meet electronically from Mr. Lawless. Is there a second?
Second.
From Mr. Pepper. And I'll have a roll call vote to vote on that question. Mr. Lawless.
Aye.
Mr. Pepper.
Aye.
Ms. Carpenick.
In favor.
And Mr. Newton.
Aye.
I'll vote in favor also, so we will have an electronic meeting today.
In order to convene this meeting pursuant to that executive order, board members are participating remotely, and we have encouraged members of the public to submit comments in support or opposition to the board electronically at bza@nashville.gov. We extended the deadline to submit comments, and any comments received by 12 noon yesterday, Wednesday, June 3rd, were provided to the board for consideration prior to today's hearing. Any comments received after 12 noon yesterday will be read into the record. Additionally, we set up a voicemail box for any members of the public to leave a message for the board on any case called on today's docket. I am here at the Sunny West Conference Room at a station that has been set up for anyone who wishes to address the board in person. Additionally, Board Chairman David Taylor is here as a face of the board. Social distance measures have been implemented. We have hand sanitizer up here. Chairs are all 6 feet apart, and we also have a mic that is flat. So members of the public, when you come forward, you don't need to speak into the mic. You can just stand by the podium, and the mic will pick you up. For these public hearings, the board reviews correspondence submitted in support of and opposition to these cases. The board also reviews correspondence and recommendations from other government agencies in preparation for the hearings. In today's hearing, staff will present the site plans, maps, photographs, and other documents that comprise the case record. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the appellant will present his or her case to the board. After the appellant's presentation, if anyone is here wishing to speak in support of the appeal, they may do so. If any opposition is present, the board will then hear from those parties. After the opposition presents its testimony, the appellant will have a period for rebuttal. According to the BZA rules, the appellant has 5 minutes for presentation if no opposition is present. In contested cases, the BZA rules allow 10 minutes for each side to make their testimony. Should the appellant wish to provide rebuttal testimony, the appellant should reserve some time from that originally allotted 10 minutes. At the conclusion of each hearing, the board will deliberate telephonically and then vote on that case. The board is vested with the power to act on these cases under the provisions of the Metro Zoning Code, Section 1740-180. All section numbers that we refer to today come from the Metro Zoning Code, which applies to the entire jurisdiction of the metropolitan government. The zoning code was adopted by the Metro Council and became effective on January 1st, 1998. I will introduce the entire zoning code and make it a part of today's record. The Metro Code requires a record of these proceedings. Because BZA meetings are recorded for the Metro Nashville Network, it is and because the board is hearing these cases telephonically, it is imperative that anyone addressing the board come forward to this podium where I identified the flat microphone on the table and speak into the microphone. All speakers should identify themselves by name and address and then make the desired presentation. The Metro Code requires 4 members of our 7-member board to establish a quorum. The code also requires at least 4 affirmative votes to grant an appeal. In the event that 5 or more members are present but the appeal fails to receive 4 affirmative votes, the case will remain on the board's agenda for the next 30 days. Applications that fail to receive 4 affirmative votes within 30 days of the public hearing will be deemed denied by operation of law. Pursuant to board rules, an aggrieved party may appeal board decisions to Chancery or Circuit Court within 60 days of the entry of the BZA order. Additionally, as per the BZA rules, an aggrieved party may file a motion for rehearing by the BZA within 60 days of the original hearing date. After that time elapses, the board's decision becomes final and no further action can be taken. If your appeal is granted, you are required to obtain the permit for which you applied. A permit must be obtained within 2 years for board approval to remain valid. It should also be noted that if false or misleading testimony is presented to the board, any board approval could be revoked at a later date by means of a show cause hearing before the board. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all appellants have been notified by certified mail, and all legal notice requirements have been fulfilled. I do have several preliminary announcements regarding deferrals, if I could move forward with those. First, case 2020-088 has been deferred to June 18th. Case 2020-073 has been deferred to July 16th. Case 2020-075 has been deferred to July 2nd. Case 2020-093 has been deferred to June 18th. Case 2020-109 has been deferred to July 2nd. Case 2020-120 has been deferred to June 18th. Case 2020-134 has been deferred to July 2nd. Case 2020-131 has been deferred to June 18th. As a general announcement regarding BZA cases during this time, we are meeting don't need that one, sorry. We are now hearing all cases telephonically. For members of the public, our board utilizes a consent agenda at each of its meetings. One board member reviews the case the record for each case prior to the hearing and identifies those parties, the cases which meet the criteria for the requested action by the appellant. If the reviewing board member determines that testimony in the case would not alter the material facts in any substantial way, the case is recommended to the board for approval. The consent agenda was published this past Friday, so anyone wishing to pull an item from consent could do so electronically. We did not receive any request to pull anything from the previously published consent agenda. However, as previously stated, we are here at the station set up at the Sunny West Conference Room for anyone wishing to appear in person to pull an item from the consent agenda if they so desire. We'll enter into the record those cases that have been recommended, and if anyone is here in opposition to one of those cases identified for the consent agenda, please identify yourself and we will remove the case from the consent agenda and hear it in its regular order. Mr. Chairman, the cases recommended for the consent agenda. First, case 2019-080 involving property at 324 Plus Park Boulevard. This is a parking variance request to construct a hotel. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 2019-080? Seeing none, next case 2020-133 involving property at 3209 Granny White Pike. This is a street setback variance request to construct a single family home. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 133? Seeing none, case 2020-135 involving property at 3757 Westport Drive. This is a street setback variance request to construct a single family home. This is recommended for consent with the condition that the house massing is limited to what was presented to the board on the site plan that was submitted with the packet. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 135? Seeing none, case 2020-136 involving property at 1103 Montrose Avenue. This is a lot size variance request to construct a detached accessory dwelling unit. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 136? Seeing none, to review, Mr. Chairman, the cases recommended for consent are case 2019-080, 2020-133, 2020-135, and 2020-136. Staff would solicit a vote from the board at this time.
All right, we have a consent agenda. Motion for the consent agenda. Is there a motion or is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Is that Mr. Lawless?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Lawless seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll call the question and start with Ms. Karpenick.
In favor.
Mr. Newton?
In favor.
Mr. Pepper?
In favor.
Mr. Lawless?
In favor.
I vote in favor also. That consent agenda passes.
Members of the public, if your case was just approved on the consent agenda, please give our staff until Monday to process all the documentation associated with your appeal, at which point you can come in to pursue the permits for which you applied. At this point, we typically call on council members or other elected officials who are in attendance. I do not see any today. So absent any other announcements, Mr. Chairman, we're ready to proceed with the cases to be heard.
Okay, first case.
The first case for the board to consider is case 2021-18 involving property at 610 South 2nd Street. This is an item A appeal challenging the zoning administrator's decision to revoke a permit for a billboard. Before you is a zoning map showing the zoning of the property. This is the aerial photography giving you a sense of the surrounding area. Site plan submitted by the applicant. And finally, current conditions of the property as shown from photographs from a recent site visit. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 118? Seeing none, Mr. Henry, you will have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Please be sure to identify yourself by name and address.
And then, yeah, can we, I think for item A cases, and just for the benefit of the board, we typically hear from the zoning administrator. An item A case is basically an applicant coming and saying the zoning administrator made a mistake. And so we typically hear from the zoning administrator to say, here's what happened. And then the applicant will say, here's, may differ on the facts, or, maybe something else happened, but here's, from our perspective, what happened, and here's why the zoning administrator made a mistake. And if there are people in the audience, which today they're not, who support the zoning administrator's decision, then they would have a chance to speak. And then the applicant would have a chance for rebuttal. In this case, there's no opposition present, and so we'll hear from the zoning administrator to explain what happened. We'll hear from the applicant, and at any time, the board members, if you want to just raise your hand on WebEx, if you have a question for either the zoning administrator or for our legal counsel, please do that, and certainly can ask a question of them anytime, and then certainly of the applicant during their presentation. So I just wanted to, because I don't think, with only item A cases I think we've had since Mr. Newton joined, are short-term rentals, and those are a little bit different. So this is kind of the first big case we've had.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Michael, Metro Zoning Administrator, with regard to case 2020-118 involving the property at 610 South 2nd Street, just across the bridge on the East Nashville side of the river. By way of introduction, the Type 2 billboard that presently stands on the property at 610 South 2nd Street is not allowed by law. A permit for that billboard was issued in error by the code staff in December of 2019. Upon realization and confirmation of the error, I communicated with the contractor and the billboard company representative by telephone multiple times and then by email to advise them of the error and that the permit would be canceled. Further, I advised them that they have the right to appeal that cancellation to the BZA and that they should consult with their attorney accordingly. Later, I had a chance to meet with the representative from the billboard company present today, as well as their attorney, to review the cancellation of the permit and the subsequent filing of the BZA case. Mr. Chairman, the Metro Zoning Code regulates signs, and more specifically billboards, at Metropolitan Code of Law 17.32.150B as in boy. Section B12 in particular states in pertinent part, quote, Type 2 billboards shall be located only on lots that have frontage on public streets with 4 or more travel lanes, or that are located within 300 feet and oriented to a limited access highway, end quote. Mr. Chairman, that's important because the pertinent sentence does provides 2 distinct ways that a lot can become eligible for one of these Type 2 billboards. Type 2, as I'm sure Mr. Henry, on behalf of his client, will point out, is just a certain size of billboard. Type 1 being quite small, 2 being the more medium size that we see around town. Those 2 ways that a property can be eligible for this type of billboard are as follows. The first involves lots with frontage on a 4-lane road, as we just read into the record from the zoning code. But the zoning administrative review determines that that's not the case here. South 2nd Street clearly has only 2 travel lanes, and although the lot also has frontage on South 1st Street, that is a street that has 2 travel lanes and additionally a bike lane that allows for 2-way bike traffic. We regard that as being a 2-lane road that fails for purposes of that analysis. The second scenario where the property could be eligible for a Type 2 billboard involves lots that are oriented to a limited access highway and within 300 feet of a limited access highway. But that's not the case here because the lot is oriented very plainly towards South 2nd Street. as is evident from any cursory drive down South 2nd Street, the Google Street views of the entrance and exit on South 2nd Street, and the very fact that the address of the property is 610 South 2nd Street. The lot in question is oriented to South 2nd Street and not any limited access highway, if there is one nearby. I know we discussed it, I guess, for later in the day. So the second option fails as well. I have reviewed the materials carefully prepared and submitted by counsel on behalf of his client in a document dated May 28, 2020. We understand the arguments have been put forth. Because we had not had anything by way of formal response to those in writing, I think it's appropriate to at least acknowledge the arguments that are brought forth and give at least a brief response to those. With this lot, the two street frontages involve streets with 2 lanes each. Again, that's our position on the zoning administrator side, but we understand the appellants will argue differently. South First Street has 2 distinct car travel lanes, but then also an easily identified bike lane that allows for 2-way bike traffic. It's my understanding of the argument that that constitutes, for purposes of our billboard ordinance, 4 travel lanes, according to the appellants. Respectfully, I disagree. I read that ordinance to require 4 travel lanes, as it was written in 1998, to contemplate car travel lanes. After all, this is a type of billboard, larger in structure, that clearly is intended to go on bigger streets, whether they be near interstates, larger parkways like Briley or Ellington or something of that nature. Not on small residential interior streets, not residential, but rather interior surface streets. Secondly, the arguments regarding limited access highway designation only matters if the lot is within 300 feet of and oriented toward a limited access highway. This lot is not so oriented. I've already referenced the fact that the lot is plainly oriented towards South 2nd Street. No one will contend that that is a limited access highway. It's clearly a very ordinary surface street going through an industrial district just across from the stadium there. There is an opportunity that the board could spend a lot of time wrangling over the definitions of limited access and controlled access highways, what that means, what's defined in state law, what's defined in local law, what that means for purposes of identifying whether Korean Veterans Boulevard and subsequently Korean Veterans Bridge is in fact a road that meets one of those definitions. Again, it only matters if it is both within 300 feet, and I believe that it is here, and oriented towards such a limited access highway. And this lot is plainly oriented to South 2nd Street. Therefore, I believe that on both of the potential criteria and the arguments in support of those criteria, the arguments fail. The zoning administrator carefully reviewed these arguments from the May 28, 2020 filing. The interpretation from the zoning administrator remains the same. This lot is ineligible for a type 2 billboard. The errantly issued permit was correctly canceled. Naturally, I want to field any questions that the board members may have at this point.
And so do you have, so someone reviewed this and issued a permit, and do you have any idea, I mean, it seems fairly clear through this analysis that, yeah, that should have never happened, and was it just a different interpretation, or do you have an idea of?
I'm forced to speculate to some extent here, and I'm loath to do that. What I know is the zoning examiner who reviewed the permit application did the best job that they could in terms of understanding the applicability of these particular guidelines of the lot in question, and reached the determination after consulting with a number of his colleagues that yes, this did meet the criteria. Ultimately, when it was brought back to my attention in my role as zoning administrator, I then went back to the analysis, visited the site, walked the property adjacent to this, as I didn't have immediate access to this property, went up and down the streets, and reached the determination that, in fact, this was not eligible for a type 2 billboard, that, in fact, the permit had therefore been issued in error, and that we had to go through the cancellation process. As I mentioned at the outset of my comments, we don't take that sort of thing lightly. This is substantial business and will be a substantial effect if, in fact, the billboard is forced to come down. As a result, I made it a point to reach out to the contractors who had obtained the permit on behalf of the billboard company. And then once I found the right people, talked to the representative from the billboard company as well, so that nothing happened where they got a random letter in the mail that was probably shocking to them, but instead we had a chance to talk all the way through it in advance so they knew what to expect and what their appellate rights would be when the time came. To your ultimate question there, yes, a reviewing staff member incorrectly made the determination that they were eligible, made the best effort, but in this case, made the error.
Okay. Ms. Carpenter?
Sure. I have a question. Is the property eligible for any type of billboard, a smaller one perhaps?
I didn't review that question as it wasn't before us, nor was there an application for such.
Okay.
Any other questions for the zoning administrator at this point? Mr. Pepper?
Okay, bear with me here a second. I'm working on multiple screens. Let me pull this up. So, Mr. Michael, I'm looking at the applicant's letter of May 28, 2020, and they state that the issue is, I'm looking at page 1, in that, quote, in Nashville, billboards are principally regulated based on location, period. At issue in this case is the regulation that states, quote, Type 2 billboards shall be located only on lots that have frontage on public streets with 4 or more travel lanes or that are located within 300 feet and oriented to a limited access highway. And so Metro's position is that this should not have been granted just based on the orientation. Is that correct?
That is one of the two parts of the analysis, Mr. Pepper. Because you correctly identified there are two paths by which the property or the lot can be eligible for the permit, we have to determine if either one renders them eligible. So on the first criteria that you described involving a lot with frontage on a street that has 4 or more travel lanes, I think is the word actually, we have to go through that analysis first to determine if that's the case here. We determine no. The second path is, of course, the limited access highway with a lot oriented to a limited access highway and within 300 feet of the limited access highway. We go through that analysis and say that in part, because the property is in fact oriented to second and not a limited access highway, that's an easy no. Based upon my review, I didn't go deeper into the analysis of the, I would say competing definitions, but one definition is prominently absent, so it's not really a competing definition. I went through the limited access highway, not defined, controlled access highway, similar, different, and specifically defined. Going to state law to look at some of those definitions. Going to words like frontage, orientation, or oriented, abuts. All of these words that matter in the analysis and that Mr. Henry, to his credit, capably analyzes in his documents. But we have to go through both of those prongs of the analysis and make sure that neither one renders them eligible. Having determined that neither one rendered them eligible in this case, that's where we landed on the determination that the permit had in fact been issued in error and needed to be canceled and was then subsequently canceled.
Okay, that answers, and I didn't ask a very good question, but you gave me a lot of information that answered it. So thank you.
Mr. Pepper, almost implied in your question was that I get into the limited access highway stuff. I do not believe that Korean Veterans Boulevard is limited access highway for purposes of our billboard ordinance. Having reviewed Mr. Henry's brief that was filed in support of his appeal, he illuminated me quite a lot. I learned from that sincerely in ways that will be helpful in the future. I don't think it's anything that turned the tide here. Otherwise, we would have approached this differently from a staff perspective.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Mr. Newton.
Yes. So did I hear correctly that the billboard is in place? It's been built already? And are there any are there any pictures that I didn't see in our packet that show how exactly this is oriented?
Probably in part because it doesn't matter how the billboard is oriented. Okay. The word oriented in the ordinance refers back to the antecedent, and that word is lot. Okay. So it's a matter of how a lot is oriented for purposes of the analysis of this ordinance. A good question that I really had to spend a lot of time on, but lot is the noun that's described by oriented.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? And because we've had a pretty lengthy conversation, I'm sorry, Mr. Pepper?
Yes, so one more question. Again, Mr. Michael, why would a bike lane not be considered a travel lane?
Because the 4-lane designation here is one that refers to car lanes and often sizes of roads. Referring to a road as a 4 travel lane road is shorthand in many instances for talking about the size or scope of road. Sometimes we refer back to the MCSP, the basic collector street plan, which is administered by the planning department to get you designations of roadways. But here, merely referring to 4 lanes shows you're talking about a bigger road. You know South First Street. We all do. We've either walked it when going to a show at Ascend or to a Titans game or down to the water park along the riverside there in East Nashville. It's not a 4-lane road. It has a bike lane, but that bike lane is a width. The 2-way bike lane, singular 2-lane bike lane, is a width that is less than 1 car lane on a road. There are, in fact, 2 lanes for cars and 2 lanes, or 1 lane for 2-way traffic with bicycles, but that hardly measures the same type of size or scope of intensity of use that would be seen with a traditional 4-lane road.
And Mr. Michael, I agree with you. I mean, I totally get that a bike travel lane is different from a car travel lane. What I'm kind of struggling with here is, it seems to me that there's nothing in the zoning code that defines what a travel lane is. Is that fair to say?
That's accurate to say, which takes us back to the early provisions of the zoning administrator's responsibilities under Title 17, which is in the absence of specific definition or specific guidance from the zoning code. The zoning administrator is not only authorized but required to go through and find the interpretation of the law that seemingly best meets the intent of the zoning code. Here, I think back to the fact that the code was put in place in 1998, taking effect on January 1, 1998, having been drafted in late 96 and all of 97. And frankly, I don't know if it was merely an adoption of some of the language from the 1974 Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. This has been at least in place for those 22 years, though. So thinking back to the Nashville of 1998, what kind of guidelines were in place then? The reality is bike lanes were very rarely contemplated, probably to the detriment of our city. But that's not taking shots at the council from back then. Instead, saying, when they say 4 travel lanes, they're not thinking about nice bike lanes that allow for interior transit in a more dense downtown area. They're talking about 4 car lanes. And that was both my responsibility to make an interpretation for an undefined term and also the rationale by which I made that determination, by which I stand today.
Okay, and did you say that there is part of the code that gives you authority to essentially, resolve that kind of interpretation? I think you said something to that effect.
Yeah, I'm going to try to scramble and pull it up to cite it for you. It's Title 17, the very beginning of the zoning code. Of course, Title 17 being the zoning code under the Metropolitan Code of Laws. Under Mr. Pepper, I said in the front of the zoning code, in the front of 17.40 of the zoning code, that's 17.40.010, just so I'm citing it correctly. It's a whole section that involves the zoning administrator. 010, authority and responsibilities, reads as follows. The zoning administrator is granted the following authority and responsibilities by this title. A, interpretation and administration. The zoning administrator shall interpret and administer the provisions of this zoning code. It goes on at some length, but that is the pertinent sentence for purposes of that statement.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sorry for the delay on that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Any other questions for the zoning administrator at this time? And, I just want to make sure that I'll ask the board, and if there's strong objection, raise your hand and we can take a vote or talk about it more. But because we spend so much time with the zoning administrator, I want to make sure that the appellant has appropriate time to make his case. And so, we'll watch the clock, but would like to make sure that if an additional 5 minutes is needed to equate to the time that we spent with the zoning administrator, again, unless there's strong objection with a showing of a raised hand. Mr. Lawless?
We might want to ask Joey if he wants to actually need, or if he thinks he's going to need any additional time before we just go ahead and just lump it out there.
All right. How about we'll just set the expectation if the time is needed after 5 minutes, and then he should expect to have at least a little added on. I just want to make sure that the applicant doesn't feel rushed. Ms. Jenner, is that acceptable?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I think, believe it or not, it's your turn. You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Sean Henry. I represent Outfront Media. My law firm is Tunica and White, 315 Desert Street. I think what I'll do here is just start where we left off in that line of questioning and line of thinking. Let me say first, you see that I've submitted a fairly substantial amount of information. Appreciate the offer of additional time. I suspect I'm going to need that. Right out of the gate, I want the board to appreciate the fact that we are in the most heavily industrial zoning district in the city of Nashville. Okay, this is the industrial general zoning district. The IG district and other heavy commercial districts are where billboards are supposed to be, according to the Federal Highway Administration. Mr. Michael read the definition, or at least the item in question here. He mentioned 4-lane road. That's not what the provision states. As you can see in that language, it's talking about a highway with 4 travel lanes. And the zoning code does define frontage. So I'm going to kind of jump around here a little bit, but I'm going to touch on both aspects because this site meets both criteria. It is certainly within 300 feet of that limited access highway, Korean Veterans Boulevard, and all 3 streets have 4 travel lanes as those terms are defined. Your zoning code, and if I could advance the board packet to page 58, this is an excerpt of applicable definitions that do not require an interpretation by Mr. Michael, the zoning administrator. Frontage means any portion of a lot that abuts a public street. The question is, does this lot, as you can see on that screen, does it abut a public street? According to the surveyor who prepared a subdivision plat for this property that was approved by the Metropolitan Planning Commission, and a billboard exhibit that we have submitted to you in this record, Mr. Michael Charette, he has found that when defining the boundaries of this property, he absolutely defines the boundary as the north margin of Korean Veterans Boulevard right-of-way. So there's no way to describe this property in a legal description without referring to Korean Veterans Boulevard right-of-way as part of the abutting street frontage. There's also the term abutting. Abutting under your zoning code means touching or sharing a common point or line. Again, the land surveyor who submitted a stamped letter here asserts that this common line that is adjacent to KDB right-of-way is a common line that abuts that street, and therefore the lot would have frontage. The issue of access has nothing to do with whether or not a lot has frontage on a piece of right-of-way. Now, if we were to take a look at what the zoning administrator can do, if he's not sure about a definition, your zoning code states that he should use, or he or she should use, the most current edition of Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, and we've looked at that. Webster, and this is section 17.04.060, Webster's Unabridged Dictionary defines frontage as a portion of land that fronts as on a stream, on a body of water, or a road. And if you think about that term, riverfront, property having river frontage, we certainly have Riverfront Park. Riverfront Park has frontage on the Cumberland River. It's accessed by way of First Street. Oceanfront property, lakefront property, in the billboard industry and commercial real estate industry, property is advertised as having interstate frontage, okay? None of those necessarily have direct access to it. It's irrelevant whether you have access to it. So I just touch on those for your consideration. And by the way, under Black's Law Dictionary, the term frontage is defined as the line of property that faces a street. The zoning administrator suggests that the lot has some sort of orientation. As you can see, none of these properties have. How do you know how they're oriented? There's no definition in our zoning code or anywhere else about lot orientation. That portion of the billboard location criteria is referring to the billboard itself.
But isn't there longstanding, though, history of a lot orientation being the street address? I mean, you would be.
I'm not aware of anywhere in the Metro Code of Laws or anywhere that I've seen that a property address equals frontage.
I'm not saying frontage. I'm talking about orientation. I think there may be a difference between frontage and orientation, but to me, orientation is if it was a home, it would be, well, you would think, well, where's the front door? But it really is kind of where is the street address.
The person that assigns street addresses in the city of Nashville is Bonnie Crumby at Metro Public Works. And she is the E91 address assigner. Those addresses are assigned dependent upon access for emergency vehicles. That's why this property has an address of 610 South 2nd Street. So its address has nothing to do with orientation of a billboard. And if you look at page 50 in your board packet, there was a question about what's that billboard look like? How is it oriented?
But now, are you saying, though, that, because I think the zoning administrator said that, or in this quote that you state on the front page of your argument, that this, type 2 billboards shall only be on lots with frontage, that statement, it says, and within 300 feet and oriented, and the zoning administrator has said that the word oriented refers to the lot, not the billboard.
Right. He's interpreting that the lot has orientation. I think we think, based on the history of permits being issued for billboards in the city of Nashville,
right,
that's never been the case.
Okay.
Never been the case. And I'm sorry, I misstated the page number. It's page 49. Page 49 is a photo that was taken by professional engineer Jamie Gillespie in his analysis. And by the way, we've got 2 engineers and a registered land surveyor who's weighed in on this subject matter. But here's the lot as you're looking towards the billboard and the elevated bridge on the left. I think there can be no question that we've got a limited access highway situation. And as Jamie Gillespie addressed in his analysis, which starts on page 45, when you take the entire stretch of Korean Veterans Boulevard from Interstate 24 all the way to the roundabout, there's only 4 points, there's only 4 lots that have direct access onto it. Obviously, no one has access onto the bridge, but Korean Veterans Boulevard has 4 driveway curb cuts. They're all on the north side of the road, beginning with the Exxon next to the interstate, and then you cross the river. You've got the Omni Hotel, which was built concurrent with the Music City Center. They have curb cuts, and the Drury Hotel. All other properties on Korean Veterans Boulevard have no direct access. So the road, according to these professionals who've looked at this, clearly is a limited access highway.
So I just want to ask a question about the limited access highway. Because, I'd read your brief, and how long does a stretch of road have to be before is there a minimum stretch of road that it has to be to have no access from the frontage and have 4 traffic lanes? Again, maybe a different point of view of what's a travel lane. Is there a minimum amount that it has to be before you can pop up a billboard?
No, sir. Not under the TDOT rules and regulations for outdoor advertising. And that's an important point. The zoning administrator's interpretations are required and must be under your zoning code consistent with federal law, state law, specifically the outdoor advertising provision, which I cited in my letter. It has to be consistent with the major street and collector plan. We've got that information in here. But what TDOT did is TDOT designated 1.7 something miles of KBB as a principal arterial. It's classified under the federal system as eligible for billboards under federal and state law. So the interpretation here needs to be consistent with what the federal and state laws how they address billboards.
But that definition doesn't also make it a limited access road, right? Those are separate. I guess what I'm trying to, I was riding my bike yesterday and I was riding down 10th Avenue, and I don't think it's zoned for a billboard, but let's say it was some fluky, industrial zone that would have allowed it. And I was driving by, and none of the houses have curb cuts, and there's 2 bike lanes and 2 travel lanes. And I'm like, well, that's, based on this argument, that's a 4-lane road, and these houses don't have any access as it's being defined here. But would that argument allow a billboard to be plopped down if it was zoned for it? And I'm hearing you say, yeah, and that seems to be a little.
I can't speculate as to other locations. You'd have to look at a combination of factors, more evidence than what's been looked at here so far.
Right.
We've supplied additional evidence in the form of what the state looks at, what they have looked at, how they fund KBB. I don't know those examples.
Right.
But the description or the definition in the zoning code of controlled access highway that the zoning administrator just referred to is every highway with abutting lands that have no legal right of access. So I would say in your example, there's controlled access. Is there 4 lane? I don't know.
Maybe not right.
But let's talk about travel way. Let's talk about the language. His interpretation is that it's vehicles only. Your zoning code defines the term travel way. And as we've supplied in the information from the U.S. Department of Transportation, the travel way and travel lanes are interchangeable. As well, they're interchangeable in the major street plan and the street design standards that Metro Public Works has adopted. But travel way means portion of public right-of-way that is improved for use by vehicles or bicycles. A bike lane is a section of roadway. A bikeway is shared with other transportation modes. So South First Street here is part of the Music City Bikeway Greenway. It has 2 travel lanes that are designated bike lanes. It's a bikeway, but a bikeway qualifies as a travel lane. And Mr. Gillespie, who's got a substantial history of employment with TDOT, points out that both at the federal level and at the state level, bike lanes are part of the multimodal transportation system. Okay, so I think if you're able to review this information, and hopefully the board members have done so, there's substantial evidence that the bike lanes equate to a travel lane, and under the definition of travel way, each of these streets qualify.
Right. Mr. Pepper has a question, if you don't mind.
Please.
Sure. Mr. Henry, I'm looking at your, I just want to be clear on something. I'm looking at your May 28th letter on page 1. Just tell me when you get there, if you would.
I'm there, sir.
Okay. In the first paragraph right under background, where you cite MCL 17.32, where the disjunctive there, or that are located within 300 feet and oriented to a limited access highway, or do you see that?
Yes, sir, I do.
Is that referring, because I wasn't clear on this, are you saying that is referring to the billboard or to the lot?
My understanding from the history of how billboards have been treated in Nashville is that it refers to the position of the billboard and its orientation as a sign.
Okay.
And if I may continue, I'd like to submit, for the record, I realize the board members at home can't see this, Mr. Chairman, but I'd like to submit, we reference in this letter similarly situated properties that have billboards crossing this river on other bridges. Interstate 24, Interstate 65, Jefferson Street. We didn't have time to get photos of those, and we have those photos here. And if I may, I'd like to submit those for the record.
Okay, and then I'll just make sure the board knows that we're just starting into another 5-minute block, and so if there's not an objection to allow Mr. Henry to finish his case, and we'll let that happen. Mr. Lawless.
Does he need the entire 5 minutes?
I don't think so. I respect the board's time. I'll be as quick as I can.
And that would give him a little bit of time for rebuttal after we talk to the zoning administrator again too.
Mr. Poole, if you'd be so kind to forward a copy of that to the chairman. Let me just, again, we've referenced.
Oh, there are multiple. Oh, I thought it was all one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's about 8 copies there. So what I referenced in the letter, again, are similarly situated billboard sites that have been approved similar bridges that cross the Cumberland River. On Jefferson Street, there's permission was given for a billboard that frankly is landlocked. But it is certainly within 300 feet of the limited access of Jefferson Street Bridge. There's a billboard on each side of the river, on the east side and the west side. And importantly, when the code signed off on those permits, they measure the height as maximum height 30 feet above the roadways. That's exactly what happened in this case, Mr. Chairman. The zoning examiner judged the height of this billboard based on the elevation of Korean Veterans Boulevard. That was a correct measurement. That was a correct interpretation. Page 2 of what we just handed out is further east off of Davidson Street, which is an extension of South First Street, right next to Interstate 24. Again, there's no direct access, obviously, to these bridges. I-65 to the north, Metro Center, 2 billboards on both sides of the river. So anyway, I'll submit that for the record. But frankly, given the way that these billboards have been reviewed and the consistent interpretation going back at least since 1998, if not 1974, under COMZO has been that these kinds of sites that have limited access, that have the minimum number of travel lanes, in this case 4, qualify as a location for a billboard, and that's in fact what has happened here. Again, I'd just like to draw the attention to the professionals who've weighed in on this question. Engineer Michael Garrigan says, physical access to the street is not in question. That's not a requirement. It just needs to have be on a lot that borders it. Talked about Gillespie. We talked about Mr. Charette, the landscape architect. We've got a letter in the record from a competitor who supports this question because they too have had billboards issued permits in the very locations that we're talking about. And Exhibit H, I just want to point out in Exhibit H, we have downloaded, printed out numerous references to not only the zoning code and the traffic code, but the major street and collector plan, which is part of that appears to be on the screen. The Access Nashville, which is the general plan, a component of the general plan Nashville Next, implementing complete streets. When you look at the complete streets programs that begin on page 64 of your packet, travelway is defined as including transit and bicycles, as well as on-street parking. So document after document is consistently counting a bike lane as part of the travel lane, as part of the travelway, as part of the roadway, as part of the highway. And again, Mr. Chairman, we have another document that does define limited access. This is in the Davidson County Strategic Plan for Sidewalks, and this was developed in 2008. We've included that. That's at page 74. They define limited access as access controlled by grade-separated interchanges or other methods. We have a grade-separated bridge. KDV is a grade-separated highway. It has limited access. That's definitive. So, Mr. Chairman, unless there's other questions, one more thing. Under the gateway for SoGRO, this is the Gateway Urban Design Overlay District. This is a zoning district and has guidelines. And it also defines the term frontage. And beginning at page 81, if I may here, sorry. It's hard to lick my fingers in this mask. The definition of frontage is actually on page 83, and frontage is a portion of a building or parcel abutting a public right-of-way. All this lot has to do is abut Korean Veterans Boulevard, and it does that. Every professional and every Metro document, including the state document and the federal document, would classify this property as we are, interpreting it as we are, interpreting it as the zoning examiner first did, appropriately. So for whatever reason, the zoning administrator has selected to take a fresh look at this, has applied a forced interpretation, very forced, without really any backup evidence to support that. I'm not aware of a governmental document that's being relied upon here for the revocation of this permit.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? All right, seeing none. Are there any additional questions? Well, I guess because there's no opposition, well, yeah, I have to pick my words right on the item A appeal. We have the appellant, and then we have the zoning administrator. And since there's no one here on the zone in the audience to speak for the zoning administrator's side of this to uphold that decision, and there's no questions for the applicant, then I can close the public hearing and then ask the board for discussion and or questions for staff and legal counsel. Thoughts on the case? Mr. Newton.
I'll just, I guess, as one of the non-lawyers of the group, you know, and I obviously I've read the documentation and I see the point the appellant is trying to make, that it is a limited access highway. But I mean, frankly, from a non-litigious point of view, I don't see how you could define Korean Veterans Boulevard, that bridge and that street, as limited access highway. You know, just you know, you'd think of limited access highway as being an interstate or Ellington Parkway, or you know, something that has on ramps and off ramps, exits. You know, and I read the document, I read the definitions, but I mean, just at first glance, no one would say, oh yeah, Korean Veterans Boulevard is a limited access highway. Now, I also understand the point, you know, the definitions that they brought forward and the point they're trying to make, but that was, you know, the first reaction was, there's no way that's a limited access highway.
Well, and there are two, I'm sorry, did you have something else to say, Mr. Newton?
No, okay, go ahead.
There are a couple of ways to get there. It seems based on what we have, it seems like that, you know, you have to have frontage on a public street with 4 or more travel lanes, or you can be within 300 feet and oriented to a limited access highway. And so, yeah, I think that it's clear it's within 300 feet. Orientation has been debated, and then limited access highway has been debated. And then, you know, on the first pass, though, the frontage on a public street with 4 or more travel lanes, you know, I guess to me the question is, one of the questions that we can ask the zoning administrator is that the picture that we're looking at right now, which has the red site plan, I mean, it shows 2 streets that the property abuts, but then it also has that diagonal that is kind of either below, or I don't know if it's below the Korean Veterans Bridge, or if it actually touches land. And to me, that's the one area where you ask, is that considered abutting, you know, a 4-lane road? I think if that's the case, then it may meet a criteria, and the other questions are not as important, because it just has to meet one of them. And so do you know if the zoning administrator, Mr. Markle, is it underneath the bridge, or what, or is it land? Do you know what that?
I'll need you to report this back from our microphone, but I walked the property on First and Second Avenue sides, and even the Google photos will show, or the Google Street View will show, my understanding of the property line is that shown here on our property map, that it kind of comes up to that right of way where the bridge abutments and construction took place when they built that bridge. Mr. Henry will be in probably a better position than I to clarify that, but my understanding of the shape of the property is that angle that you described, and it does just come up to First Avenue and stop at the line where the bridge has its construction going above first.
But it is underneath the bridge, as far as you understand.
It goes right up to, sure, and of course the street goes under it. And that stands in contrast to the property immediately to the north, which I believe is owned by the Metro Sports Authority, which has a really strange shape, including properties going across the streets and right of way and other things. This is a more traditional shaped lot, 9 angle street.
And that property you're talking about is 710 South First that we're looking at on this map. It's a parking lot, I think.
It's the parking lot, 501 South First, perhaps? No. Sorry, I can't quite tell from it, but where you see a blue P for parking, that I think, yes, may show as 710. That's what I'm referring to as being more irregular shape, that way going across and under the bridge. 610 is a more traditional shape, so it doesn't do the phosphorus or the line where the bridge is.
Could the board members hear that at all?
I was having a difficult time. John Michael, you need to speak a little bit more clearly if you could, please.
Well, I did a lousy job of translating. I was asked to translate, and then when it came time to doing it, I thought that was a lot to remember, and I want to make sure I get it right.
You want to restate your question, Mr. Chairman, so I'm really clear and give a concise answer this time for once in my life?
Well, when we were looking at the other photo that had the site where it outlined the property in red, it showed frontage on First and Second, but there was a little diagonal that's kind of, at least without looking at this map, that looked like it was touching Korean Veterans Boulevard. And I guess my question was, is Korean Veterans actually over that piece of the property? Is there land that it touches? And could you consider that? Well, I mean, obviously you didn't, because you didn't allow the billboard, but why wouldn't we consider that to be frontage against a more than 4-lane street, which would qualify them to have a billboard?
To question number one, no, Korean Veterans Boulevard, the bridge portion, road or shoulder or whatever, does not touch the property. The bridge goes over the property there, if that's a good direct answer to that first question. And I'm not quibbling over whether it touches the right-of-way underneath the bridge or anything like that. Just the bridge does not touch the property of that location, the roadway, the shoulder, nothing like that. Why do we not regard it as frontage? Frontage, for example, when we look at sidewalk questions, if this property redeveloped for some reason in a manner that triggered the sidewalk requirements, I would say that probably the sidewalk would be triggered on both the South First Street side and South Second Street side. Would we think for an instant that they would be hit for requirements on sidewalk upgrades along KVB? A literal bridge that's literally 20 to 30 feet above the subject property? No, because it has no actual frontage on KVB. A rough parallel from a different section of the zoning code, but I'm not having to jump into Title 12 or multimodal plans from TDOT or anything else to get that kind of a stretch. Right in the same zoning code, the way we apply frontage is say that frontage is on the streets that you touch. Here, and Mr. Henry capably pointed back to the zoning code definition of the term abut or abutting, I think is actually the term defined, talks about a touch is the verb in that section. And by the rationale brought forth, the fact that this stands in close proximity over the air and that is sufficient to describe touch would say, look, it's not very close to the pedestrian bridge. It's not very close to the Woodland Street Bridge, but I could make some sort of a contorted aerial line to those, but clearly they don't touch just because this one stands in relative proximity. Maybe there's some consideration by the board that they do touch, therefore are abutting, therefore that is frontage. But that's working 3 definitions backward to get to a pretty tortured analysis, in my opinion, in terms of the way I read the law on this. This is one where you might imagine, Mr. Chairman, we don't want bad outcomes for business people in the city in terms of their development plans, but we're not willing to get it wrong on the law to help bring about those outcomes. Here, if a year from now that billboard is still standing because the board says so or a court says so, that's fine with me. If the billboard is gone promptly thereafter because all appellate rights have been extended and expired and the court said it had to come down, that's fine with me. A sincere interpretation of the law is that that's not frontage. Therefore, it's not having any frontage with regard to KVB. Frontage on KVB may not be as important because, as Mr. Henry correctly pointed out, it's a matter of 300 feet with the proximity. Check. It's a matter of orientation of the lot. At least that's what the law says, and that's how I interpret the law based upon the black letter and plain meaning of that law. Not available there. Going back to the definitions of limited access versus controlled access, look at the specific language that's cited from TDOT's multimodal manual, which I have to admit, I don't know if that's codified law or if it is just as it is titled a multimodal manual from TDOT. I don't think it's codified law, but nevertheless, it provides a definition talking about roadways that allow for faster speed traffic, minimizing curb cuts or access, I think is the exact word, so that longer travel and faster traffic can proceed. That's not this. This is riddled. Every intersection when you come across the bridge is met with a stop sign by every cross street or a red light. Safe, rightly so. That's the only safe way to handle it. So I disagree with each of the points of that analysis, respectfully, because I do have great respect for Mr. Henry and the very capable research that he's done and a lot of the good ideas that he's brought forward in this discussion. Here was just one where we professionally disagree.
Okay. Any additional questions? While the zoning administrator's at the mic. Or additional comments? Ms. Pepper.
Okay, bear with me. Let me pull up this letter. So to me, this boils down to two things. I mean, the applicant has two ways to meet the code here, as Mr. Henry has pointed out. So let me look at the first, which is type 2 billboards shall be located only on lots that have frontage on public streets with 4 or more travel lanes. That's the first. And I think that the zoning administrator's interpretation of travel lanes as not including bike lanes is compelling and is also reasonable. I think I understand that if the code was enacted today, maybe travel lanes is as prevalent as bike lanes have become. You know, there would be more question about whether travel lanes included bike lanes, but I'm convinced that in 1998, when they drafted the code, when they said 4 or more travel lanes, they were referring to a road or streetway big enough that it had 4 travel lanes for vehicles. So I think the zoning administrators, I think that's the most reasonable interpretation of that language. With respect to the other essentially test that the applicant can meet to have this billboard, that would be or that are located within 300 feet and oriented to a limited access highway. And I disagree. Mr. Henry is a very good lawyer and always makes very compelling arguments. But to me, this boils down to what is the construction of this sentence, just grammatically. And I think that the orientation there is referring to the lot, not to the billboard, because it says type 1 billboard shall be located only on lots, and then skip that first part, or that are located within 300 feet and oriented. So I think that, to me, that sentence clearly means that it's the lot that has to be oriented to a limited access highway, assuming for the sake of argument that there is a limited access highway. Still, this property is clearly, to me, oriented to South 2nd Street. So I think, my opinion is that the zoning administrator did not err for those two reasons. Again, I think Mr. Henry made very good arguments, but I think that, the facts here are the facts, and that's the way reasonable minds may could disagree, but that's my interpretation and my view of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? And Ms. Carpenter.
Well, I was going to thank Mr. Pepper for his analysis. That was really helpful. The only thing I wanted to say, though, is that we have many letters from engineers that have studied this issue. And I wanted to point out their expertise in that matter. Not saying I disagree with Mr. Pepper. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. Mr. Lawless?
I thought that Mr. Pepper actually stated exactly where I'm aiming, if that helps Mr. Henry any at all. And I haven't heard anything that changes my opinion up to this point. Maybe I'll have some revelation here shortly, but I think Mr. Pepper hit it pretty well this time.
And I agree. The only thing I'm thinking about is the orientation I do agree with the grammar of the law as has been discussed. And then I think, if I driving down from here to, Fessler's Lane, and you've got all these billboards that are kind of in the back of these lots that don't seem to have access to, or don't seem to be oriented to the interstate. It does, I think, give some credibility to the argument that has been made about historical practice, although I don't have any evidence other than the packet that's been presented, which shows similar situations, but it doesn't list street addresses or, orientation as it's presented either way. And so, yeah, I do appreciate it. And yet I still struggle, there may be 5 of us here in 5 different ways to get to an answer, but I struggle with limited access highway because, I do agree with Mr. Newton's comment earlier about, having exits and on-ramps and the inability to walk or bike. And it seems, as many times as, I think we've all probably been over that bridge. It doesn't, to me, feel like anything that would be under limited access. But again, that's the non-lawyer talking, and we have a lot of legal information that may argue otherwise. Mr. Lawless?
I am going to make a motion that we uphold the determination of the John Michael in this particular instance.
A motion that the zoning administrator did not err?
That is correct.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
This is Mr. Pepper. I will second that.
I have a motion and I have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Or thoughts on? All right, seeing none, we will call the question. Mr. Lawless?
Aye.
Mr. Pepper?
In favor.
Mr. Newton?
In favor.
Ms. Carpenick?
In favor.
And I'll vote in favor also, so that motion passes 5-0. Good luck. And do we need a quick break? Anybody? No break? We'll keep going. Next case.
Next case for the board to consider is case 2020-119 involving property at 104 Duluth Avenue. Before you is a zoning map showing the zoning of the property is R8. Aerial photography giving you a sense of the property and surrounding area. Site plan submitted by the applicant. And finally, photographs from a recent site visit showing you the current conditions of the property. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 119? Seeing none, the appellant will have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Before he makes the presentation, for the benefit of the board, this is a challenge. This is, an item D appeal. The request here is to change there's an existing non-conforming use at this, a legally non-conforming use at this property. The current legally non-conforming use, and that means that it was legal when it came into existence and the zoning changed, so therefore it is allowed to exist under the new zoning. Legally non-conforming right now is a steel and metal fabrication company. The request is to change it to a different non-conforming use. In the criteria that you're looking for under the code 174650, the non-conforming use of a building designed and constructed for non-residential activities may be changed to another non-conforming use upon a determination by the Board of Zoning Appeals that the new non-conforming use will be more compatible with surrounding land uses than the existing non-conforming use. So I'll let the appellant make his case here, but what you're looking for is whether or not the change he is looking to make is more compatible with the surrounding areas.
All right, if you would state your name and tell us what you're trying to do. And if you that's the mic there, so if you can kind of project that way, the other board members will be able to hear you better.
Well, Chairman Taylor, board members, thank you for your time. My name is Brian Gallagher. I'm a senior associate at Edge Planning, Landscape Architecture, and Urban Design. We're the applicant on this property for our client. Ms. Lamb gave a great summary, so I won't repeat any of that in the essence of time. But as it shows, our client's intent through adaptive reuse of the existing steel structure on site and fabrication facility is to create a neighborhood amenity which would accommodate the use of indoor commercial amusement. That would be centered around an ice curling facility, which is a little more detail on what's in the letter. As you can see, the site plan that's on the screen, the item D appeal request only is in part to one of the 3 parcels of the subject property and only a small portion of the actual existing structure. The majority of the existing structure and the other 2 parcels do fall under currently IR zoning, which permits the use by ordinance of the indoor commercial amusement, as we would like to utilize the entire building as well as that other small parcel. That appendage that extends into that underlying R8 zoning necessitated this request for you. During our design phases through this, we have worked with Councilperson Roberts on this, as well as the surrounding neighbors, their unofficial Nations Neighborhood organization, to share our design intent, our floor plans, building elevations, landscape plans, site plans, out to the neighbors, onto their Facebook pages, kind of gather intent and responses back. So far, everything we've gotten back has been positive with, supporting a use that would be a little bit more of an amenity to the community, wouldn't be the fabrication facility. Ironically, the largest comment we got back is what is ice running. So that's been more of our content with them. But as you can see through the pictures up
Would you
here,
like to tell us what that is?
Well, maybe you've seen it in the Olympics, but for example, the floor plan isn't on here, but probably 2/3 of this building will house only 3 sheets of ice. So with that, that's 4 people on average per sheet for curling on that they can use. We'll have some other items in there. I don't know all the terms, but you push the puck down to one end. They have the brooms and the brushes. It kind of became a hit, but.
Why are there so many parking spaces?
So our client asked the exact same question, to be honest with you. The parking spaces are based on the zoning ordinance for indoor commercial amusement. Is one of the few amusement uses that has a defined, I believe it's 1 per 200 square feet for use of how many spaces you need versus going through, I think, the zoning administration or staff to go kind of use by use how that facility will be used to determine the exact number. So right now it is parked in that instance. We've gotten that question both, is it overparked, underparked from the neighborhood? And that's where we've gone to say, it's parked to meet the standards of the existing ordinance. I'm sure everyone would like less impervious ratio, but we'd rather not file an appeal just for that. When we can meet it with the site design on there. So we provide some additional pictures. The pictures up there from the site visit show the same. You can see how the existing facilities use the property. It is quite unsightly right now. So based on that, I'm here to answer any other questions the board members might have, and would respectfully ask for a favorable recommendation and determination. Thank you.
Ms. Carpenter.
Will the curling, will it be a spectator event? I assume it's not going to be, but.
So this facility will be open to the public. The idea right now is essentially open to the public and would be for club use. When the club is not using it, anyone from the community could come out there, rent time. You think of it essentially like a bowling alley. The idea right now is that there would also be possibly a small food and beverage in there that would serve anybody who was spectating, similar to, we always use the analogy of a bowling alley. To best describe it, but it would be open to the public as well as possibly host small tournaments to do.
Do you see the amount of traffic coming down the road to this event space being greater than it is now?
Probably in some case, yes. Obviously Public Works will have a determination of whether there's anything warranted from an aspect of off-site improvements or on-site improvements to accommodate that based on the strict calculation.
And I take it that the neighborhood association didn't have a problem with that. They weren't concerned with that.
No, as of right now, I mean, their concern was, do you have enough parking? Or we got a couple of comments of, or do you think you're underparked? How we've handled that typically is just, we're meeting the ordinance. We honestly feel that we might be slightly over parked, but we'd rather have more spaces there than less. So we were fine accommodating what the ordinance states.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Lawless?
I might remind everyone, I believe that the United States won the gold medal in the curling last Olympics, if I'm not mistaken, and it also is somewhat of an interesting and unique spectator sport.
All right, Mr. Newton?
I too had fun watching the curling, the last Olympics. But I guess my question would be, is there any kind of, I don't see any kind of like landscape buffer between this and the houses on the left side of the page there. I guess that's the south side of the property. Is that a requirement for this non-conforming use to have that landscape buffer between the houses?
From our code research, it is not, but we are required to pretty heavily buffer along that entire property line as there is parking right there. So there's a consistent evergreen landscape hedge through there that I believe is 2 shrubs deep, as well as canopy trees and ornamental height trees. So, and then any services back there, dumpsters, anything like that, obviously have to be 100% green for the ordinance.
Okay.
We do have a landscape buffer on the other side of the property, which obviously isn't part of the
right. Yeah.
item D.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? All right. Did you have anything else?
Thank you for your time.
All right. With no other questions, we'll close the public hearing. And thoughts? I'll say this was one that I thought probably had some potential to be on consent because of the lot that we're talking about is just the hatch lot, not the entire parcel, but I didn't know what indoor commercial amusement meant, and it wasn't defined in the materials, and felt like that's something that needed to be better defined before we could really make a determination. Ms. Carpenter?
I'll say I don't find it to be, and hopefully I'll say this right, less non-conforming, or I find it to be less non-conforming than the existing use. So I would...
Ms. Carpenter, the language you're looking for is more compatible with the surrounding area.
Yes, thank you. More compatible with the surrounding area. So unless there are any other comments, I'll make a motion. It looks
Mr.
like...
Wallace?
And I'll second the motion. I think it's a pretty doggone good thing, and it doesn't change it very much.
All right. So, Ms. Carpenter, did you already have a second to the motion? You haven't fully defined yet. But,
well, I will move to approve the non-conforming use.
All right, and that's acceptable to Mr. Lawless, I assume?
Absolutely.
All right. Is there any questions or additional comments? Then we'll take a vote. Start with Ms. Carpenter.
In favor.
Mr. Newton.
In favor.
Mr. Pepper.
In favor.
Mr. Lawless.
In favor.
I'll be in favor. That's a unanimous decision. So congratulations and good luck.
Next case for the board to consider is case 2020-132 involving property at 3960 Dodson Chapel Road. This is a request for a variance from floor area ratio restrictions to expand a medical office building. Before you is a zoning map showing the zoning of the property as MUN. Aerial photography giving you a sense of the surrounding area. This is the site plan submitted by the applicant. And finally, the photographs from a recent site visit showing you the current conditions of the property. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 132?
Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you all can come up here. Before we start, I think this is the first time I can recall a floor area ratio variance request from the board. In fact, I always was kind of under the impression that was off limits. So I just want to make sure we do have jurisdiction, and if we do, then because it's the first one I've heard, what are the criteria?
So there are limits to the jurisdiction that the board has with respect to floor area ratio under 174340. It specifically references the table 1712-020C and the floor area ratio found there. This particular request is under 1716-060A, specific to a medical office. It says medical offices shall be limited to 2,500 square feet of gross floor area per establishment, with no more than two establishments per lot. So this is not under that table. It's talking about gross floor area ratio, and it's not under the table that the board does not have the jurisdiction to vary from. So in this particular instance, I believe you would have the jurisdiction to vary from this code provision. Again, the code provision being that they're limited to 2,500 square feet, and it's just like any other variance. Hardship is the primary criteria you're looking for. Well, not the only criteria, but there's got to be a hardship, no injury to the surrounding neighborhood. That list of not financial burden is not the only hardship. It's not self-imposed. That list of criteria that you typically go through for variance, you would also go through for this one.
Okay. All right, sir, if you would state your name and address and tell us what you're trying to do.
Sure. Farhan Ferdowsi, address is 1312 Harding Place. And this is regarding one of the tenant rehab center that has been there for 5 years. And now because of his growth in business, he wants to add to the space next to him that is empty, which is approximately 1,300 square feet that he wants to add to his business.
Okay.
And that's the only medical in that center that we have. That's the only one.
Okay. So there's only one medical center in this property.
That is correct.
And so, again, because this is the first type of case I've heard like this, I just want to make sure. So basically, the rehab center is on the corner of the building, and they want to take over the space
next to it.
And that space,
1,300 square foot.
Right. And so it's 1,300 square feet. And are you saying that because it really can't be easily subdivided?
It cannot be divided, no.
So that's your hardship, is that you don't have a way to subdivide that space to pull out 450 square feet.
That is correct.
For the applicant. And so the applicant would end up being 400 square feet, 450 more feet than they're allowed.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, or?
No, that's all. I hope that it can be approved because he's been there for 5 years and we don't want him to lose.
Okay. Is there, are there questions from the board? All right, seeing none, then we'll close the public hearing. Thank you, and we'll discuss. All right, thoughts? Mr. Newton.
It's probably a question for Ms. Lamb, but if there was hypothetically another medical office that wanted to take over that adjacent space that they're trying to take over that was not this clinic, would they be able to do that without any issue?
Not having researched that particular issue, obviously it says there can't be more than 2 establishments per lot. Assuming there is not another medical office on this lot, and assuming that medical office meets all the other criteria, I don't see any reason why they would be prohibited from moving into there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I think it may be possible but really difficult. And then I'm not sure what kind of space you'd have that was actually rentable, to actually make that happen. And so, it seems like it's dictated by the current, architectural design. But I see Ms. Carpenter with her hand up, so she may have thoughtful assessment of that.
No, actually, I was going to agree with you 100%. So if you wanted to make a motion, I would second it.
Okay. Well, I'll move that that we grant the variance from floor area ratio based on the hardship of the existing layout of the facility and the fact that they're not adding any additional space to their buildings, but it's just essentially an interior renovation that's confined by the current blocks of space.
And I'll second that.
Have a motion, have a second. Is there any additional discussion? Then we'll vote, and I'll vote in favor since it was my motion, and ask Ms. Carpenter.
In favor also.
Mr. Newton?
In favor?
Mr. Pepper?
In favor.
Mr. Lawless?
In favor.
All right, that motion passes. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, can we take 5 minutes before we hit the short-term rentals and
We'll adjourn for 5 minutes.
knock those out? So, yeah.
Here, I'm here.
All right. We're all here.
Before we move forward, well, we can go ahead and start. The first case on the short-term rental docket is case 2020-055. I just spoke with the appellant on the break. He's withdrawn this case, so we will not be hearing that one. We'll move on to case 2020-065. This is involving property 178 2nd Avenue North, number 101. This is a challenge to the denial of a short-term rental permit based on operation after the permit expired. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 065? No one is here in opposition. Board members, Mr. McBroom is here to make a presentation on behalf of staff, after which point the appellant will have 5 minutes to make your desired presentation.
All right, Mr. McBroom.
Good afternoon, board members. This is advertising and operating short-term rental with an expired permit on July the 20th of 2018. A type 3, which is non-owner occupied permit, was issued. On July 20th of 2019, the permit expired. September the 3rd of 2019, renewal documentation was received approximately 16 days after the 30-day grace period had expired. December 31st, 2019, the cancellation letter was sent after the renewal information had been reviewed and found to have been submitted too late to qualify for renewal. January 16th, 2020, the listing was removed. January 10th of 2020, the host letter was sent, and the estimated delivery would have been January the 17th. On January 22nd of 2020, the BZA appeal was filed. There were 11 documented stays after the permit expired. No documented stays after the cancellation letter was sent, and no documented complaints against the property. No other actions were taken.
So you don't have any documented stays after the 22nd of January when the appeal was filed?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Is the applicant here?
Yes, you can go ahead and start your presentation.
Yeah, if you can just swap places with Mr. McBroom and just come up and tell your name and address and why you're here.
Sure. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, it's that big box right there that's...
Alfonso Alexander, 806 3rd Avenue South, Nashville, Tennessee, and Paul Walters, same address.
Okay.
So we're representing the owner here. As was stated, we missed the deadline for renewal application because of a clerical error on our part and did not realize that we applied. And then upon application, along with several others at the same time, we thought that everything was okay until January, roughly January 15th, January 16th, we received a letter letting us know that we had missed the deadline. We had a clerical issue on our side, which is what caused us to miss it. Then we stopped operation of the property. Our request is asking if you would allow us to go ahead and reapply for a new permit now versus having to wait and incur additional loss on the part of our owner that we're representing.
Okay. And then, but you have not rented the property since January 22nd on a short-term basis.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Anything else to add?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll close the public hearing and discuss an expired permit that had a letter go out December 31st. It was received and expected to be received in mid-January. They appealed on January 22nd, haven't rented since then. I mean, I don't have an issue unless someone raises their hand and wants to discuss further with them applying sooner. Any thoughts? Well, I'll make a motion that the zoning administrator did not err. The applicant did rent on an expired permit based on the fact that they haven't rented for nearly 6 months already, that they would be able to apply for a permit on Monday. Mr. Newton.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Newton. Any other discussion? Then I will vote. I'll vote in favor since it was my motion. Mr. Newton.
In favor.
Ms. Carpenter.
In favor.
Mr. Pepper.
In favor.
And Mr. Lawless.
In favor.
All right, so that motion passes. So you don't have a permit. Wait till you get the permit. As y'all are you know that, but you are able to apply for a permit on Monday.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Next case.
Case 2020-069 involving property at 1401 3rd Avenue North, units 208, 242, 330, and 428. Is the applicant here for case 069?
Is the applicant present? I don't see the applicant's not present. Have you had any communication with the applicant?
We communicated with her once we started hearing item A cases again, code staff did communicate with all of these short-term rental appellants to give them the option of which date they wanted to be heard.
Okay. Well, and since I guess I would propose that, and I'll move that we defer this one meeting, which is typical on the first no-show of an applicant, especially given the situation that we're in. Mr. Lawless?
I just want to make one sure. How did we communicate with these folks? Did we do it in writing?
We did it by email.
Okay.
Mr. Carpenter?
I'll second your motion.
I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Then we'll vote. I'll vote in favor. Ms. Carpenter?
In favor.
Mr. Newton?
In favor.
Mr. Pepper?
In favor.
Mr. Lawless?
Against.
All right, that case will be deferred one meeting.
Next case, 2020-078, involving property at 1978 Gatlin Drive. Is the applicant here for case 078? No applicant appears to be present, Mr.
Okay, then it looks like we only have one person here. So let's skip that case, go to the next one, and then if we need to defer two of them, we'll do it with one motion since we have to do that by roll call.
Which case are y'all here for? 2021-30.
So is no one's present, anyone present for case 112? Then I will make a motion that we defer case 078 and 112 for one meeting to give the applicant one more chance to come. Ms. Carpenter?
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Lawless?
Same question I had on the previous one. This is more for Ms. Lamb. Did we also contact these people by email?
Yes, Mr. Lawless, we communicated with all the applicants on these short-term rental cases via email, and to my knowledge, we heard back from all of them. And Jessica is nodding her head.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a motion, I have a second. So we'll vote. Ms. Carpenter?
In favor.
Mr. Newton?
In favor.
Mr. Pepper?
In favor.
Mr. Lawless?
Same as last time, against.
All right, and I'll vote yes too. So those two cases will be deferred. We'll hear our last case, which is case 130.
Last case before the board to consider today is case 2021-30 involving property at 2136 24th Avenue North, short-term rental challenge to the cancellation of a permit due to a change in ownership. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 130? Seeing none, Mr. McBroom will make the presentation for staff, and then the appellant will have 5 minutes to make their presentation.
On February 20th of 2019, a Type 3 non-owner occupied permit was issued. June the 2nd of 2019, the property was quitclaim deeded to T&T LLC, which has 2 members. The registered agent is Ms. Tina Rothroth. On January 28, 2020, the permit was renewed by Ms. Candace Salter, the presumed property manager. A subsequent review of the permit found that an ownership change had occurred. On March the 17th of 2020, notice of violation sent by the zoning examiner, Robert Osborne, for advertising excess occupancy. The STRP was permitted to house 10 occupants, and the website advertisement read 16 plus occupants. On March the 19th of 2020, the cancellation letter was sent. The second and last advertisement was removed on April the 9th of 2020. There were 19 documented stays after the ownership change. There were no documented stays after the cancellation letter was sent, and there were no documented complaints for the property, and no other actions were taken.
And is this a situation where it has eligibility issues for reapplying, or is it?
No, sir.
Okay. All right.
We had received notification.
I'm sorry, sir, could you just take your name and address, please?
Tom Rotroff, 805 3rd Avenue North.
Okay. And then tell us why you're here.
Here to ask for reinstatement of the short-term rental permit for 2136 24th Avenue. We had received notification that it was canceled due to change of ownership. And as the gentleman mentioned, we took it off the platform as soon as we received the notification. And the reason there was a gap between the notification being issued and us taking it off the platform, we were in Chicago. Unfortunately, we had suffered a personal tragedy. Our 38-year-old son-in-law had passed away suddenly in his sleep, and we were with our daughter for 2 months in Chicago. As a result, we did receive the notification in the mail earlier, but it was forwarded by our neighbor. And once we received it, we immediately called David Frabit. He had given us what our options were, was to wait a year and to reapply, or to take the action that we're taking now to appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have had the property for a year. We've never had any complaints, violations. We've paid all of our taxes, and we have been good stewards of that property. And we're asking, due to the hardship that it would create to wait a year to apply again, that we get immediate reinstatement, for the reason that, one, we weren't aware that by putting it in an LLC, which came under the direction or the guidance and advisement of our attorney and CPA, right, that it was in violation. Even though when I did check later or subsequent, I did find that there is an ordinance that prohibits that. I perhaps may have still interpreted it as being permissible, for the reason that the LLC is the same members that were the original permit, which was P. Thomas Rotroff, myself, and my wife, Christina. And we have not added to or subtracted from the membership of the LLC. So we would have interpreted that as still being the same members, not realizing that that perhaps is not complete legitimacy. Right.
I'm one of the non-lawyers on the board, and that makes a whole lot of sense to me. But we have some folks that are experts in real estate law too that recognize that if any kind of change to a company like that would be
I understand
a change in ownership. But certainly you're not the first to come to us with having done that, thinking that it was essentially the same thing in terms of ownership. But it did look, I think the zoning examiner, Mr. McBroom, had testified that you didn't have any stays after you got your notice of cancellation. So you attested that as well, when you got your letter. And I think that we'll have to talk to the codes folks about, just because this is a change of ownership, and you've, through your information have shown that there was a change of ownership because to the LLC, that we'll have to talk with them about what we can do, but I just wanted to make sure that there was nothing else that you had to add, and that we had all the information that we needed to try to figure out what we can do to.
The only thing I would add is that we did reach out to our councilman, Ms. Toombs.
Right, and we have a letter.
Get her support on it as well.
And we do have a letter from the council lady, stating that she doesn't believe that you should be penalized and would have no objection to you all being able to have a permit for that property. All right, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Not at this time.
Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Lawless.
Yes, it appears that there are several letters in opposition. Have I got my package up correctly on this one?
No, this is case 130.
130. Okay.
Yeah, and I have a letter from Council Lady Toombs in supporting, and then there's an operating agreement, and I didn't see any. There's nothing that I can see that. Now the case before this had, I think, a letter of opposition, but that was when it was deferred.
You're correct. I'm sorry.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, we'll close the public hearing and discuss. And Emily, I've got a question. I'm sorry. And a change of ownership. I know we've had cases before where we allowed the applicant to apply, but is this not a case where the applicant could reapply?
So in this particular change of ownership, as the board knows, effectively kills the permit that was existing. Oftentimes, as the board often probably recalls, members of the public or appellants come to the board and say they didn't realize that ownership change would kill their permit.
Right.
Historically, codes has, if someone has operated after a change of ownership, codes has made the interpretation that if they operated without knowledge, we don't hold that operation against them. Once we notify them that the ownership effectively killed their permit, if they stop operating, we'll let them reapply. If they continue to operate, that operation with knowledge, full knowledge of not having a permit, that operation would be held against them in terms of not being able to obtain a permit. The issue comes in not in an owner-occupied permit where they're eligible to reapply regardless. The issue that has come before the board in the past is non-owner-occupied permits. So when it's a non-owner-occupied permit, if they change the ownership and that kills the permit, we might tell them they can reapply. But as you know, the state law says that a change in ownership means you apply under the current law. So if they're not eligible for a non-owner occupied permit, even if they reapply, that's where it gets hairy before the board. And so again, as with all short-term rental cases, it's a bit convoluted, but if it's an owner occupied permit.
So do you know what the situation is for this case?
To my knowledge, it's owner occupied and it's not owner occupied. Okay. It's zoned OR20, but that permits, let me see. So the current zoning of this property is OR20A, and I believe that does allow non-owner occupied, so they would be eligible to reapply.
Okay. And then what was the date of the cancellation or the last known?
Yeah,
how long has it been since all this happened? I know. Yeah, I think you said the quit claim happened in March.
The quit claim happened in June of last year.
Okay. So maybe this was March. Let me.
That was made in January and March 17th.
I'm sorry, you can just tell them. Sorry, we're scrambling over here with the paperwork.
The quit claim deed was executed on June the 2nd of 2019. On the 28th on January 28th of this year, excuse me, the permit was renewed. And then on March 17th, a violation notice was sent concerning the occupancy. On March the 19th of 2020, the cancellation letter was sent subsequent to a review of the permit that found that the ownership change had taken place. So ownership change June 2nd, 2019, and the cancellation letter sent March 19th of this year.
Okay. And then, and Mr. McBreen, you said that y'all don't have evidence of, after the March 19th, after that notification, there's no evidence of rental.
That's correct.
Okay. And so it appears that if we could say.
You also determined that there wasn't ownership. If you determine that there wasn't ownership change, it sounds like they are eligible to come in and reapply based on the zoning being OR20.
Okay.
Or you could determine that there was not an ownership.
But we don't have to. But there's no penalty here. We would just say there was an ownership change, and therefore you have to. I guess it's one of those things. Why couldn't they just reapply now?
They can.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions or thoughts from the board? Mr. Lawless?
I mean, obviously, there was an ownership change by putting it into the LLC, but since there's no tantamount, there's no error, I mean, there won't be any delay for them. We can uphold the finding of the administrator, and then they can still come in on Monday.
Right. Absolutely.
Am I correct with that, Emily?
That's correct, Mr. Lawless.
Okay. All right. I'm going to make a motion that we uphold the administrator's determination, and then they can come back in on Monday.
With the assumption that they be allowed to reapply on Monday.
That is correct.
Okay.
This
Have
is
a motion.
Mr. Pepper,
Is there a second?
Mr. Pepper seconds it.
All right. Motion by Mr. Lawless, second by Mr. Pepper. Any comments or questions? Discussion? All right. Then we'll call the question and start with Mr. Lawless.
Aye.
Mr. Pepper?
Aye.
Mr. Newton?
Aye.
Ms. Carpenick?
In favor.
And I'll vote in favor also. So you are eligible to reapply for a permit on Monday. And then assuming that you meet all the eligibility requirements for a permit, then you're good to go.
And just a point of clarification, one, we had received a renewal back in January of 2020 for this year. Would this be like a brand new application where we have to go through all the notices?
Right, because
to make the fees.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and they can, Mr. McBreen, they can tell you exactly, but that because of the change of ownership, that old permit doesn't exist anymore, and so we're just saying that you can go apply for another one, on Monday.
Okay.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before we adjourn, case 2020-112, the board just voted to defer this due to being no-show. Ms. Shepard here, who keeps me on the straight and narrow and always keeps me apprised of what's going on with cases. This case was on the last meeting's docket. It was deferred to today due to the applicants not showing up. After that meeting, the applicant notified us that he had submitted written comments that he wanted to be considered by the board. As you know, under the COVID-19 circumstances, we have offered appellants opportunities to submit written documents rather than showing up in person. He made that request and asked that it be put on today's docket with his written documentation, or today's docket, with written documentation to be considered rather than appearing in person. Unfortunately, the documents that he submitted were inadvertently left out of the board's packet. I can give you the facts of the case. The primary concern typically by the board is that he did stop operating after he received the notice of violation. So it may be appropriate for the board to go ahead and hear the facts of the case. There are some letters in support, and then maybe go ahead and act on it even without his not being here.
Did everybody hear that?
Yes, we heard.
All right. I hope everybody wasn't getting up out of their chair ready to go.
I can keep it brief.
Enjoy the rest. Unless there's any objection, then I'll ask that we pull that back to the docket. based on this new information and the fact that there was no opposition present when we asked if there was any, I mean, there was no one else in the room, so that we know there was no opposition present.
And I'll make this brief. This is a permit at 1108 Berwick Trail. The permit expired on May 8th of 2019. The appellant or the permittee did continue to operate after that expiration. We sent a notice of violation to him on February 26th of 2020. He removed the ads. He did not repost the ads. He filed the BZA appeal, and there was no evidence of advertising or any operation after he had been notified that the permit had expired. We have no documented complaints, and there are 2 letters in support of this application.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Then I'll say, I'm sorry, Mr. Lawless.
I was going to give Ms. Lamb a difficult time, but no, I'll hold off on
I can't imagine Mr. Lawless would give anybody a difficult time.
It's much more fun doing it in person. I sure hope we finally get back together as a group again.
The face mask takes some of the sting out of it.
Understood.
Well, I will move that based on the evidence presented by the code staff that the applicant, the zoning administrator did not err. The applicant did rent their property on an expired permit based on their behavior once they were noticed in February, and the fact that there were no complaints, that the applicant would be eligible to reapply for a permit on Monday. Is there a second? Ms. Carpenter?
I will second.
Have a motion, have a second. Any discussion? Mr. Lawless?
I just have one question. When would they be eligible otherwise if we didn't have that?
I don't think till next February, because that was when they were noticed, right?
I would have to look at the date this permit was issued. If the board had they're eligible whenever the board determined that they're eligible, because you have the discretion to reduce the 1-year waiting period. If the board denied his application, it would be, let me see, the appeal was filed on, I guess it's upon a finding by the board, so it would be 1 year from today.
Yeah, it's finding on the board, so it'd be a year from today or Monday.
Right.
If the motion passes. Any other discussion or thoughts? All right, call the question and ask for a vote. Ms. Carpenter?
In favor.
Mr. Newton?
In favor.
Mr. Pepper?
In favor.
Mr. Lawless?
Opposed.
And I'll vote in favor, so that motion passes 4-1. And with Ms. Shepherd, is there any other surprises that you have for us?
We all know who's in charge around here.
Yeah, seeing none, we're adjourned and look forward to seeing, well, I guess our next meeting is going to be telephonic also, and then the first meeting in July, unless the governor changes his order, will be in person.
That's correct.
All right, we'll look forward to seeing everybody in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Sounds good, thanks.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.